Okay, so my name is Evan Strong, and I make videos like this geared around the lacing of our shoes, the tying of our shoes, and the things that we wear within our clothing, especially modern 2024 designs and 2024 man-made materials. Today's the 17th of September 2024, and I show how those things and the discrepancies within them don't allow our bodies to have their natural functions, their natural capabilities, natural balance, natural strength. And I show free modifications you can do within the clothing that you already have with nothing but a pair of scissors to just allow your clothing to work for you rather than you working around it. A few prerequisites that I always say are to lace your shoes with my technique. Phew! You fell down. We're gonna keep it rolling. We're gonna keep it rolling. We are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ, and that is how I can speak for people without ever having met them. I've gone into very, very great depth on all of the things that I talk about, things within clothing, the natural functionings and workings of the human body, and yes, undisputed truth. It's not opinions of mine on how things should sit or work or be or cuts you should make or shouldn't make. Yes, it's just universal, undisputed truth. Any person on any part of the globe could do it on their own body, within their own clothing, and it would work for them. So, prerequisites that I always say, as I was starting to mention before the phone started to fall to the earth, lace your shoes with my technique, which is within my content. Wherever it's placed, it's in there in multiple places. That includes tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside, just to reinforce that internal rotation, natural function of the body, traveling up the entirety of the body from there. Pairing that with removing the tags from the tongues of your shoes up through the entirety of everything that you wear, clothing-wise, or place on your body. Okay, those are prerequisites, those are musts, just to allow the body to have a chance to operate. And again, I've gone into very, very, very great depth on what each and every one of those things does. Undisputed, universal human design, truth. And so I know some of these things might seem a little foreign, but they are what they are. Okay, so what I want to talk about in this video here is I talk about shoelaces so very often, and I've discussed and I've shown and I've explained, again, to where there's zero dispute, the proper shoelacing and tying technique, which is my technique that I found through a lot of trial and error, through prayer, through a lot, right? About a year and a half ago, I've told my story about how I got my first pair of barefoot shoes. I started to realize that the lacing was pulling my feet in ways that I could feel more because there's less shoe material, so the lace actually had a greater effect on my foot, or at least perceived, right? I could feel it more. And I started messing with lacing techniques, and I started messing with tying them, and I was realizing we need to tie them evenly. So, and the effect that those have, again, I've shown it, I've shown the natural walking gait cycle of the human being on my own personal body when I was barefooted, and you know, I understand the body very, 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 very well, and I understand its correlation and relationship with clothing very, 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 very well. So, I make bold claims how we should not have to stretch unless something very major happens, how we should not be exercising just to try to get exercise in, and how we should not be trying to work up to a capability because our bodies are just designed to work, and they do it very well until altered. Okay, I do not stretch. I never had this kind of mobility until I've done what I've done within my clothing, which is all of the things that I show within my content. So, freely. Yes, when I talk about lacing, it's not only that there's a very specific way to lace and tie your shoes, but the importance of having shoelaces in your shoes is something I haven't really discussed, because I always talk about how shoelaces alter our foot's natural function. So there's probably people who at that point could then think, okay, what if I just get open-toed shoes? What if I just get shoes that don't have laces and my foot slips into? Well, I see why you could say that. But again, undisputed truth, I'm going to go into it on why that's not quite the same, because my shoelacing and tying technique, all it does is allow the shoe to fit on the foot like a glove would on the hand. Allow all the functionality to be in there while still allowing protection, right? Without restricting it. But if you picture a glove, right? It's got all the fingers and the thumb, and it fits your size, it fits your hand very, very well. Picture a glove versus a mitten, right? You think about those, if you don't know what a mitten is, either by the word or you've just never seen one, it's like a glove, although for all 4 of your fingers, it just has one covering, and then the thumb has its separate covering. And so when you're wearing a mitten, it keeps your hands warm, or it keeps your hands protected from things more than if you had nothing on your hand, but it doesn't allow your hand to function normal. And I've gone into great depth of the natural functioning of the human hand. This is how you'd be operating with a mitten on, right? Now, if you were to think of those individual fingers within the glove as laces of the shoe versus a mitten having just one for all the fingers being like a slip-on shoe, right? Very similar in what it's doing to the functionality of either the hand or the foot. Because in having those individual fingers in the material of the glove, they can each do their individual functions and just in a way they naturally would. With having your shoe laced and tied with my technique, it just creates a shape that is the shape of your foot, right? When you lace and tie your shoe with my technique, when you put your foot in there, your ankle is so loose in a good, healthy way, relaxed, natural. And within shoes that slip on, I mean, it's like I'm just on one foot so casually and naturally, and I do this all the time within these videos. Yeah, within like a slip-on shoe, even if it fits decently snug, there's nothing actually reinforcing the shape of your natural foot. So as you move and walk, the material of the shoe can kind of just react to those movements however it's going to react, and it's going to react in ways that aren't quite the shape of your foot. And your foot is then going to try to be doing its natural thing while there's something pretty snugly on it, if this shoe in this case is snug. As I mentioned, our clothing should fit quite snug in the proper points and positions and without restriction, but quite snug, because if you have that same shoe that was quite snug but now it's loose, there's a lot of footwear nowadays that people just kind of slide their feet in and they're just kind of flopping around, and it puts them in external rotation. I've gone into just such great depth of, again, the universal design of the human foot, skeletal system wise. And I've shown how an arch needs to be internal. The outer toes grip, and it rolls the foot up and out on the outside of it, and puts the ankle and leg in a natural outward bend slightly. I mean, I've gone into it in very, very, very great depth. I understand it. My feet currently are that way, natural. Yeah, when you have a shoe that you're just slipping your foot in and kind of flopping around, your foot cannot operate normally. It can't. It has no chance to. Whether you're trying to force it to or not, I always say we cannot tell our bodies what to do. I cannot tell my body what to do. He cannot tell his body what to do, and she cannot tell her body what to do. They just do what they do. Skeletal system wise, structurally, the positioning of them, right? I've talked about all the muscles of the body do is move and operate the skeletal system, and it needs to be in the position to be neutral to where it has rotations here and rotations here. And if we're trying to tell it to do something, such as putting it within a shoe that forces it to go out into external rotation just because there's excess room in it, or whatever it is, just not allowing that shoe to fit on the foot as a glove would on the hand, then the foot will be altered. Okay, so when I talk about how incorrect lacing and tying greatly affects your feet, the solution is not, again, this is your opinion, but this is universal human design. The solution is not to just remove laces by just getting shoes that you can slip on, because of those things that I was just mentioning. And you'll see that people will be wearing like just shoes that they can just slip their feet into, and they'll just be walking with like no activation in their body. And we need to just be naturally internal, naturally, right? Just the position the body would be in if it just wasn't altered at all. The natural, universal human design. It really is universal. It really is one way. It really is that way. If you can go sit within an anatomy class and learn about the skeletal system of the human body, and then become like a physical therapist or an orthopedic person or something, then there is a universal human design. That's all I'm talking about. So my lacing technique just allows that to be what it is. That's all it does. So it's not only important to just make sure that the shoes you have with laces are laced and tied correctly with my technique, but, and it's not that it's my technique, but it's the technique that I always show, the technique that I came up with. There might be other people who do it exactly as I do, but I came up with it like out of my own, well, through a lot of prayer and revelation, and like out of my own being. No other human showed it to me, right? That's why I call it my technique. But laces are very, very important, because if you want to go into my content where it is placed at, there's videos where I've shown like a shoe just off of my foot, and I've shown the lacing and I've described it. You can see it just allows the shape of the natural human foot. And so you're not going to be able to allow that to be how it is without laces in there. Because laces, they allow you to cinch the shoe, like I was saying, very snug without restriction, right? There's a good happy medium there. And the way that the laces, again, just being a hatch, being a weave of rope is all lacing is, the way that they operate each step, they actually really do play into the natural workings of the foot. And you can't get that by just trying to like manufacture a shoe with no lacing that is shaped like the foot. It just doesn't operate the same with motion. It doesn't adjust the same. Well, it really wouldn't adjust at all, probably, you know, unless there was really some kind of thing you were trying to do within your design. Laces, having laces is very important. It's not only that once you do, or if you do, they need to be laced with my technique. That is true. Again, universal human design, undisputed truth. But it's also just very important to have laces within your shoes. And yeah, I mean, I've gone into it to where I've shown the workings of the foot. I know some people, I don't want to say this in like a mean way, but I know they almost want like an easy way out, where it's like, I don't want to have to relace my shoes. I can kind of feel now that you're talking about these things, Evan, you know, watching my videos or whatever, that the laces within my current shoes, the way that they came, don't quite feel good on my feet. But I don't really want to relace them, and I don't know if that's actually necessary. So then people might just slip their feet into like open-toed shoes or closed-toed shoes, but that are slip-ins. It's just not the same for the foot's operation. It's just not. And I mean, I don't get anything out of people using what I would call, again, my technique. Not that it's mine. I don't get anything out of that. But the reason I hit it so hard and the reason I stress it so hard is because I will be designing clothing, and the whole point of that is to allow the body to be even up top, right? Just meaning just from like the ankles up, basically. I'm not designing shoes. And so having a foundation down there even will then allow my even clothing to feel how it is, which is even, right? But also, I mean, just doing your shoelaces alone, removing the tags from the tongues of your shoes and lacing and tying your shoes with my technique, if you did nothing else within your clothing, it wouldn't feel quite right, because a lot of clothing really is playing into the same patterning, and I've gone into that and into that and into that. But just lacing and tying your shoes correct will change your life. Again, like monetary wise, I don't get any money out of it. I don't need any kind of recognition out of it. I don't get anything from it when I just stress and stress and stress lacing your shoes and tying them correctly with my technique. I don't get anything out of that. But it has to be done for the human body to work the way it's designed to work. So, yeah. Because there's just, especially here in the United States of America, as I mentioned, we've got an abundance of clothing, we've got an abundance of types of shoes and shapes of shoes and ways that they stay on the foot or that you just slip your foot in or whatever it may be. It's very, very, very important to have laces, because then you can actually shape a rope in a way that resembles the shape of the foot, and it stays that way. And again, it actually plays into the natural workings of the foot, because it's then allowed to kind of adjust a little bit, because it's an actual rope that has, you know, motion within the weave of the lace. Like, it's very important just to have laces within the shoes that you wear, as well as doing it correctly when you do. So, yeah, because when you grip your natural healthy arch, that weave of the lace actually reacts to it, and that won't happen within just like a slip-on shoe. And so the play within that shoe, I mentioned what happens if there's no play, right? But that happens. But then if there's play within the shoe, now your foot can't even possibly react normal, because it's like having really loose pants. You walk around and your hips can't work because you're trying to hold your pants on. What, by like opening your legs, which is an unnatural opening. You know, I discuss natural internal rotation and opening of the hips, but it's a very similar thing, right? So it is actually so important to have laces within your shoes. I've discussed how ideally we have very little give within the laces. Like, you pull the lace and it should have little give, like no give. Yes, I mean, I'm using paracord currently for my laces. I don't love polyester, but I've talked about this. But anyway, also having them round, right? Round and just about zero give, if we can get there within the laces of our shoes, because then the foot can just work how the foot works. So anyway, the solution to having shoes come laced incorrectly, as they just about always are, is not to get shoes without laces that you could just slip into, because that's a whole different problem. I do this because that's what it will do to your feet. So collapse your arches into external rotation, and then all the other things I mentioned. Plus there's more, but really the point is just there's an importance to have laces to begin with. So, all right, I will be designing clothing, minimal clothing, 100% natural material clothing that just allows the body to operate. I always show that the pants have to sit above the hips. Universal human design. I've gone into it in great depth. My designs will incorporate slightly higher in the front than in the rear, because I always mention they need to be at least level. But if I design them to where they're slightly higher in the front than in the rear, then if they fall at all anterior, it will then just be level, ideally, rather than going a way that we do not want. We want a posterior tuck to activate the core, to internally rotate the legs, and I've gone again into very great depth. I've shown it on my own body. Yes, free content that you can go find where this is placed. My shirts will sit as they should, the edges at the edges of the shoulders to allow mobility, and the seams on top to sit behind the shoulders to reinforce that natural internal rotation and just allow the seams to be out of the way so that you can just have mobility that you would naturally have. So, yes, if you do decide to purchase my clothing, when it comes time for it to be available, please only purchase it if you do in a size that fits you, okay? Because that's the whole intent. Again, as I just showed, they need to fit and sit in the ways that they do to allow the pivot points and hinge points of the human body that are naturally there. So, I'm very excited for clothing myself, and it will be great for everybody who does decide to purchase it when it comes time to. Never designed clothing up until this point, so this will be new for me. So bear with me. How it goes, it will go. But it will come, and it will be good. It will. So, Okay, 17th of September 2024 is today's date. My name is Evan Strong, and that is why it is very important to have laces within your shoes. I've discussed over and over and over and over, and it is my prerequisite just to allow the body to have any chance to naturally function, right? I've discussed my shoelacing and tying technique, but just having laces within shoes is important, okay? All right, thank you.